Every good true crime story starts with a 911 call. This case is no exception because if Linda Stermer had called 911, I think she may have been viewed differently. So she was tried in 2007. You saw that video we did a couple of weeks ago. This is the current trial. We're going to walk you from A to Z. It's probably going to take 2 parts to do it in, but it's full of emotion. And spoiler alert, she was found guilty. Let us take you to how we got there. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
On the address of your emergency.
Wake up, America. It's the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. It's a TV show on the internet about 2 best friends who are called by a small town sheriff to investigate a detective who uses AI to interpret his partner's dreams. Boy, I wish I could do that. I'm John. I'm an actual 911 dispatcher. I've been doing that in my community for 10 years. I got tons of experience. Joining me, as always, is my podcasting partner with police benefits. He goes by the fake name of Drew Breezy, but he is an authentic cop. Lieutenant Andrew Baxter, formerly of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's something in sunny South Florida. Drew, this was an exciting case. I'm excited to get to the testimony. Take it away.
I submit to you that you want nothing to do with these dreams that I have, but let's go into the trial of Linda Stermer. This took place very recently, and as I said at the top, spoiler alert, she was found guilty, but there was a long way around it.
2007 that the incident happened. It was 2 years later that the Van Buren County Prosecutor's Office finally had enough evidence to proceed to trial. She was tried that same year, and it was January 2010 that she was finally convicted the first time. But she would take her case from the law library in prison, and she managed to get granted an appeal on certain federal grounds that prosecutorial misconduct and ineffective counsel, because her own lawyer did not call in an arson expert.
So we're going to start again. Here's the opening statement from the prosecutor.
You will also hear on January 7th, the day of the fire, people start trying to gather some initial statements. What happened? You're going to hear from Deputy Gary Gruss, hopefully today. He will tell you what Linda's first statement was. Start asking more questions. Start going into the things that don't make sense. The explanations that the defendant starts giving and how the story grows and changes. It's going to start here. Mr. Williams, Chris Williams is going to come in. He's going to talk to you about how he started his extramarital affair with the defendant, knew she was married, knew her from work, 6 to 8 months prior to the fire.
So that's the prosecutor. Her name is Susan Zuderveen. She's in Van Buren, Michigan, and Van Buren County, Michigan. She's alleging that Linda beat Todd and then set the house on fire with gasoline. And she's it's her job on behalf of the people of Michigan to prove that beyond a reasonable doubt to the jury. She's saying that he ran over him like right prior to his death. But she's the one that kind of highlights the inconsistencies of the stories that Linda gave. And, in retrospect, she's just probably refining what the original case was. The case that Linda was granted a retrial on. She's probably just, she knows where the weaknesses lay because they took that to a federal judge and the federal judge said X, Y, and Z. So she's able to shore up X, Y, and Z for this retrial. John, did you pick up anything from the opening statements?
She definitely has a roadmap to victory with Linda having been successfully convicted before. If you can avoid the reversible errors that was found in the federal appeals process, all you have to do is play again, put in another quarter and play another round. What was interesting to me is that her strategy was about showing how inconsistent Linda was. And what was amazing is you watch every single person that comes up who had interactions with Linda after the fact, they all had the same thing to say, is that Linda could not get her story straight. She told multiple stories and she behaved in other egregious fashion. So prosecutor had easy work as far as laying out that Linda was unreliable.
This time her defense attorney was a guy named Wolfgang Mueller. It's one of my favorite attorney names. I do believe if Wolf Mueller was in a different setting, he would be a great stuntman. But he is the one that was arguing that the fire's cause was inconclusive. Therefore, if there's no arson, there's no felony murder, essentially. So the opening statement came from his co-counsel. So let's watch the defense's opening statement. Skip Kelly.
And the facts will show that where he was now positioned, there was a fuel furnace that was part of the heating system of the house that had been installed by the family, Mr. Stermer, as part of the building. Several individuals was concerned that this fuel furnace was going to explode. And all at the same time, they're continuing to call in to 911, telling them, get somebody out here quick. The evidence will show that there was an accidental fire in a house, in a room that had burning candles, that had burning lamps, oil lamps, that had a fireplace, and that the location of where the fire started and how it began to grow was in the same room where Mr. Stermer was, not where Miss Stermer was, because she was down in the lower part of the house doing laundry and chores.
Saw a very interesting thing the other day, John. It's a guy named Chase Hughes. He's part of the behavior panel. If anybody has ever seen the behavior panel on YouTube here, I think they're a podcast, but they analyze people's body language and all these things during trials or pre-trial and all this other stuff. But Chase Hughes himself was a military guy. He's a retired military guy. He was on Joe Rogan. He was on Diary of a CEO, which is fastly becoming one of my favorite podcasts. And what Chase Hughes is saying is in order to convey or communicate a good message, you have to speak slower with more intentional pauses. And if that's not a classic example of what he's talking about, that defense opening statement certainly captivated the jury, I would think, because I hold no animosity for any defense attorneys. They're just doing their job to make sure that the system is doing what they're supposed to do and what it's supposed to do. This defense team was solid. It was really, really good. And I think that he delivered a great opening argument.
Speaking slowly with built-in pauses to give the audience time to reflect is a great way to pad out the runtime of a podcast. And I do it all the time.
It is.
I would say that actually the opening statements is where they would eventually get themselves sunk, because here he says that the fire was caused by accidents, and he's already taking the shotgun approach. There was a furnace that was, the bolts were shooting out of it. It was getting ready to explode at any time. There was a fire. It was a cool January day, and they were trying to relax by the fire on a Sunday morning. There were candles all about Todd and what was ostensibly the most romantic tableau of his troubled history of fighting with his wife. They came up with all these reasons why there would have naturally been a fire, to include the fact that Todd was falling asleep while smoking a joint. They came up with all of these ideas of why there would have been a fire in that room. And the simple fact is that the more explanations you offer, to me, the less likely it is. You're coming up with all these reasons why he wasn't set on fire. By trying so hard to offer so many explanations, I think they undid themselves, Drew.
I got you. I understand. I think that there is a difference between delivering a captivating speech and the speech having substance. And I think that that was the point I was trying to get across. Like, this guy can hold your attention. Here with pauses. This is the first prosecution witness. Her name is Kim Thompson. She was a neighbor and a friend to Linda and Todd Stermer. Here's an observation I have about all these witnesses, John, and I don't know if you picked up on the same thing. I would love to be neighbors with all of these people.
Yes.
They are
Yes.
just so nice, Midwestern Americana kind of honest, good people. And even Linda, who was sitting there listening to people testify against her, almost had the face of, I understand. You just do what you have to do.
Yeah.
I don't think she's a good person. Don't confuse me, or don't get it confused. I don't think she's a good person. But these people just came across as so honest. There's a witness in a couple of minutes that I'm going to show you that I never got to meet any of my grandfathers, but I wish this guy was my grandfather. I almost want to call this guy and ask him if he'll be my grandfather.
I also picked that up immediately, that if you ever wanted to live anywhere, it was here. And in fact, at one point, the defense attorney says, this is a tight community, and this is why your motto is, we grow together. We have people there that are just casually mentioning the names of the chief and the assistant chief of the fire department, and they're not even associated with them. They just know who these people are. They say, one witness says, I've spent a lot of time with the fire department, and they try to recruit me. And I thought it was better that they spend their training money on a younger person. But when this incident happened at the Stermer residence, neighbors on all sides responded. There were people who were listening on the radio scanner. They would call each other. They showed up to bring Linda comfort. They brought her shoes to wear. People showed up, and the lawyer said, well, what were you going there to do? And they said, anything we could. So it was shocking and heartwarming to me that there's still people like this out there that just take care of each other, Drew.
Yeah, it is a reminder that there are more of these people in the world than the loudmouths that are on social media, right?
Or YouTube, yeah.
Or YouTube or whatever. Yeah, like that the people you see in the comments section making the most of the ability to remain anonymous and to troll you into being angry or upset are far and few between. They're empowered by the anonymity. These are people that are completely honest. If you're a nurse or a public servant or whatever, and you're dealing with somebody like these people, they're just nice people. They're giving you straight answers, and if they're giving you like cranky, untoward answers, there's a reason behind it. Like they're angry or upset about something. And I think so. A couple of observations off of that, it lends to like the jury. It doesn't matter what a defendant says or doesn't say on the stand if they don't get on the stand. It matters if the witnesses are credible. And look, just watch for yourselves, folks. The next 3 or 4 witnesses you're going to see, probably the most credible people on the planet.
I think that was the prosecutor's secret arsenal, is that how unreliable Linda is and how good and reliable and trustworthy all of her neighbors were.
There may be an element even, John, of Linda thinking these people are so naive and gullible that they're going to believe that, they're going to believe anything I tell them. Here's Kim.
Approximately 2 miles, 2.5 miles.
And did you know Linda Stermer?
Yes.
And how did you know her?
Through our children, we also shared a love of chocolate labs and horses.
And
so she gets a little smile out of the defendant, even like it's a nice memory, and she's not holding animosity towards the defendant, which is a very important. If you're a cop and you're on the stand, this is the greatest lesson I can give you about courtroom testimony and demeanor. You're not there to judge the defendant. The judge is there to judge the defendant. The jury is there to render the opinion of guilt or innocence. You're there to tell the story. And if there's a heartwarming part of the story, just like Kim, is that her name? Kim Thompson came across, like we shared a love for chocolate labs and we also loved horses. And she was looking right at the defendant when she said it. And you see this woman who's on trial for murdering her husband in the most heinous way, had a nice warm smile come over her. No pun intended.
More cynically, I would say a lot of our comments from the last video were how much Linda's appearance has changed. In fact, at one point, one of the people who are called to testify on the stand says how much Linda has changed in her appearance. She's leaning into the whole grandmotherly look here with her
Sure.
gray hair and her sweater and her shawl and all this. If I may be cynical, her smiling and appearing grandmotherly and chumming it up with the witnesses is another way to look innocent in front of the jury.
I agree with that to a degree, but there's some sincerity that you cannot fake. And I believe that this is a sincere moment between these two. That's just my opinion.
When did you know the Stermers in 2007?
Yes,
And did you become aware of a fire that happened at their home?
yes.
How did you become aware of that?
My cousin heard it on the scanner, and she knew that we were friends with Todd and Linda, and she got a hold of us and said that there was a fire, and so we immediately ran over to provide comfort to both of them.
Did she say she ever saw Todd before she ran out the basement door?
At that point, no. Later, she did say that she did see him, and that he ran out as she was trying to drive the van to go get help, and that was all. Just that she saw him when she was in the van trying to get help.
So that was at a later date?
Correct.
That she said she saw him outside?
Correct.
And you said that as you talked to her then, the story changed a little bit?
Yes.
Do you recall then the next version or what the next thing she told you?
One of the other things she had said was that he was smoking pot, and she thinks that he caught himself on fire.
At one point when you were helping with the dogs, did you see the van?
Yes.
And tell me about when you saw the van.
We were trying, Coco was under control, the chocolate lab, and we were trying to get control of the other dog, and he kept trying to get back in the house, and so we were really worried that he would do that and get hurt or injured or killed.
Is there anything more genuine than her concern for, by name, Coco?
Yeah. And that she took control of the dogs afterwards. She watched the dogs. To follow up on my last statement, though, when you talk about how there's some sincerity there you can't fake, I think a true psychopath is able to exploit true sincerity in other people and their own sincerity for their own benefit. So I still don't put it past Linda that she may still be leaning into the chumminess of this, all for the jury's benefit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I get it.
So my husband and I kind of tried to corral him, and he ran around to the walkout level, and when we ran down there after the dog, I saw the van door open, the van was running, and I observed what looked like blood on the front fender, and I believe bumper, but definitely on the fender.
When she first said that, my mind went straight to, like, she saw blood on the fender. I was like, she means bumper. Like, I arrogantly assumed that she did not know the difference between a fender and a bumper, just from investigating, hundreds of crashes. People confuse those or interchange those terms all of the time. So it's completely understandable. And then here she is, just like cool as ice. Correct. Doesn't even correct herself. Amplifies the data by saying, I'm pretty sure on the bumper as well, but definitely on the fender.
And I remember my husband and I looked at each other, and we both said the same thing. Something's not right.
Something's not right, John.
One thing I liked about her testimony was that she said, the first deputies to arrive on scene are going to be tending to Todd, and a deputy that arrived on scene saw the blood on that vehicle, bumper, fender, or elsewhere, and they asked her to guard the vehicle to make sure that no one touched it or put any water on it at all, because that blood was there. And I think it's amazing when you're a law enforcement officer and you're so overwhelmed by what's going on, but you can trust your community to preserve evidence for you. Drew, is that something you would do in Tampa?
Well, you make do. I don't think it's something I would do in Tampa, no, because that's probably going to come out of the trial. Like, you had who guarding your piece of evidence, but at the same time, they were doing what they could to protect the scene with who they had. And like you've pointed out a few times, because I don't really think in these terms sometimes, but in a rural area like this, there's probably a volunteer fire department. Who knows? There might be like auxiliary deputy sheriffs that are out there working, patrolling, serving as law enforcement for the community. So it's completely understandable, and it's all done in good faith. But it also does expose. It tells two tales. It exposes the evidence to being tampered with, but it also lends to how this community they're more trusting of the people of their community, which is the way we should operate in America, is it not?
From an evidence point of view, though, the most important thing of the deputy arriving on scene is to prevent a murder investigation from ever being necessary. If he can save the life of that patient, that's
Right.
First and foremost above preserving evidence of any criminal trial that would come out. Sometimes when you arrive on scene and you have a victim of an act of violence, trauma, and it could have been intentionally inflicted upon them, the most important thing is to preserve their life. So you might be trampling through evidence in order to do CPR or to stem the flow of blood. But if you can prevent it from murder charges from ever being necessary, that's the most important thing, Drew.
Here's Ken Thompson. You heard that Kim was very uneasy with what she saw in the bumper, the blood and all that other stuff. This is Ken. This is her husband. And I think you'll see what I'm saying. This is Americana.
And you were standing in front of the house?
Yes.
Having this conversation with Linda?
Yes.
Did you see Todd at all?
Not that I recognize this guy.
So tell me what you saw.
Well, I saw Chief Leach on the ground working on something, and I didn't recognize as a person.
Did you go over there?
I went too close. I wish I never would have.
What'd you see?
It was unrecognizable as a person.
So the shake of the head was not in negative response. If you look closely, his lip is quivering. He's fighting the tears because men of that age aren't, you're not supposed to show emotion like that, I guess. But he's there. He sits on the stand, just probably punched in the gut because of what he's recalling in his head. And this is what people will commonly do in interviews and interrogations when they have this extra nervous energy or this extra strong emotional response. It's got to go somewhere, and it's going to come out either in your hands, your movements, or your face, or your mouth. Even like you might say something, but
I read it as he didn't want to say, he didn't want to tell her. He wanted, it was him drawing back from that awful moment. Like with Connie Calhoun, I think when these people are forced to reckon with awful memories of the horrific thing they saw that day, I think it replays vividly in their minds, and the horror, even though 17 years old, is still fresh for them.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Dr. Michael Markey. He is the forensic pathologist that actually did Todd Stermer's autopsy.
On this date, I was assigned to autopsies in the morgue, and I performed the autopsy.
So does the body arrive in a body bag?
Yes. So typically, the body is within a zippered body bag. Many times, there's actually a seal on the body bag to indicate that it was sealed at the scene and that it's still sealed when I open it, and it will typically also be labeled, usually with an identification tag indicating the individual's name.
And is that a significant finding in terms to maybe timing of death?
The inhalation of products of combustion are, at least in my field, when we're examining a burned body, one of the questions is whether the person was alive or not during the fire. And finding evidence that they inhaled the smoke and soot, the products of combustion, indicates that they were alive and breathing at the time that the fire was occurring. So the fact that there was evidence that he inhaled such products were indicative of him being alive at the time of the fire, and also may indicate that he may have had some inhalational injuries as well, or injuries related to inhaling the smoke and soot.
So an important point from this forensic pathologist, John, like this is how they determine, say you know, we live by a lot of water where I live. There's a lot of water around here. Like I live by Tampa Bay. So, I mean, you got on one side of the state, you have the Gulf of America, and on the other side, you have the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And when you pull a body out of there, often the autopsy is going to reveal, is there water in the lungs? Because if there's water in the lungs, generally that means that they were alive when they went into the water because they inhaled some of that water. Or is there no water in the lung, meaning they were put there after their death. They weren't breathing. And this is the same thing that he's explaining about the inhalation of the like petroleum products or the soot or the ash or whatever. He said that, you know, he could detect that he inhaled some of the stuff. So obviously he was in the, you know, the literal heat of the fire before he even died. And then he came outside. Is that what you take from this?
I definitely take away that Todd suffered. We need to, especially within the contrast of what good neighbors Linda had, right? There's a standard of good behavior in this community. And Linda not only defied that standard with her poor behavior in her treatment towards her husband before this fateful day, but she defiled that standard of human behavior. The cruelty and the viciousness with which she probably set about with delight that she could finally take an act of violence against her husband. This was an act of not only just killing him to get him out of the way, but to satisfy her own anger. And I think that contrast of that anger in her heart and the extent to which she despised Todd, particularly in contrast with those loving people around her, I think it's important to mention.
And if we move then to the section number 2 on the blunt force injuries, I believe you've talked a little bit about that, but can you go into a little more detail? It appears that there's a little bit more explanation and some additional findings.
Right, sure. So under Roman numeral number 2, capital A, are the lacerations or the skin tears that were on his scalp. Beneath 2 of those lacerations, the 2 that were on either side of the head, there were very small, about 1/4 to 1/2 inch length indentations. Some might call them depressed fractures of the skull. They were very superficial and they just involved the exterior surface of the skull. So underneath 2 of those lacerations, the skull was, for lack of a better word, had small dents related to the impacts. But there were no internal injuries in the brain otherwise. The brain itself looked normal. There was no bleeding in the brain or around the brain to suggest a brain injury.
And I want to just clarify the blunt force trauma. Again, how is blunt force trauma? How does that happen to a patient?
So a blunt force injury is one in which something that's essentially blunt or not sharp impacts the body, or the body impacts such a surface. So, you know, being struck with something like a board or something that's not got a sharp edge will cause a blunt force injury. And classic blunt force injuries are either abrasions, scrapes, contusions, which are bruises, or lacerations, which are skin splits or skin tears. You know, conversely, if part of the body strikes another object that's blunt, you can see the same thing. So if you fall to the ground and hit your head on the floor, you may end up with a bruise or a laceration. So it's either something.
Is it possible to knock someone unconscious with a blunt object and not have bleeding or brain injury?
Yes, I mean, that's essentially what a concussion is, where you have an alteration in consciousness due to an injury that typically isn't necessarily caused by some obvious visible injury to the brain.
So the importance of that, John, think about it. If you remember from the first trial and then parts of this trial, there's still the allegation that he was set on fire. Todd was set on fire after not waking up. So, like, the prosecution is making the case that it's possible that he could have been zonked in the head, knocked out, and then set on fire, and then came to. Is that what you're reading on that?
We don't really have a clear picture of that, because when the sons testified, they said that he was unconscious, appeared incapacitated. I'm not a doctor or anything. I think normally when you knock somebody out, they don't typically stay unconscious very long. I think it's possible that these are also injuries he might have sustained under the van. I don't know.
Yes.
All I
Yes.
know is that setting Todd on fire wasn't enough for Linda. She didn't do a good enough
Right.
job. She was an amateur as a murderer. All she did was cause him a severe amount of pain, and she had to resort to other means to subdue him.
This is prosecution witness Connie Calhoun. She was very interesting in the last episode. If you haven't seen that, make sure that you go back and watch that. It's a very comprehensive backstory of how we got to this point, how we got to the new trial. But Connie Calhoun was actually put in jail very recently, compelled to testify, because she was the original 911 caller. And the more I watch Connie Calhoun, the more I start to do the math. I truly believe that she did not want to testify, not because she was protecting Linda and not because of maybe a drug habit, as was alluded to in the court proceedings.
Judge Brickley ordered her to have a drug panel in jail.
Yeah, I tend to think it's that she really just did not want to relive this again. And she's talking, she doesn't want to be labeled a snitch probably, but I think that might be the least of her worries. I think it's I think it's just more that she just didn't want to relive it. It is very possible that her, if she did fall into drug use, that it could be to bury the trauma or the pain that's associated with this case, to be honest.
And tell me then, after refreshing your memory, when you were driving down the driveway, what the van was doing.
Facing our vehicle, like, as we were coming towards each other.
So you were coming towards each other on the driveway?
Yes.
And were you able to see who was driving?
Yes.
And who was that?
Linda.
And once your vehicles started going towards each other and you're looking at her, did the van make any turns or changes in the direction?
I mean, at what point, I don't know, but I know it had moved. The vehicle moved.
It moved? Where did it move to?
I can just tell you where it kind of ended up. I don't really recall, like, where exactly it had moved.
Did you see it leave the driveway?
Yeah, it left the driveway, so it went towards around the house.
Towards around the house, you said?
Yes, so
So this is relevant, John, and just to refresh everyone, because Linda's story, her original story, was the whole reason why she was in the van in the first place, was to go get help. And what Connie is saying is that she and Mike Matheny, who's another witness that testified in this, were driving to bowling. They saw the fire and they pulled into the driveway, and therefore help was there. If your theory is that I need to get out of here to go find some help, you would think that the first sign of human life is your now lifeline. Like, they're going to have a cell phone. They're going to be able to travel somewhere to get help or whatever. But that's not her reaction. What Linda's reaction was to get out of the way, go around the side of the house and park in the back.
If I was writing this as a story where Todd was set on fire by accident and Linda loves him and wants to help him and has to go get help, she would take off with the van. And when she sees Mike Matheny and Connie Calhoun approaching, she would jump out of the van and wave. and call them over here, please, my God, help me, help me. Todd's on fire, or say something like that. Now, Connie here on the stand, this is only after she's reviewing her testimony from the prior 2009 trial. The prosecutor gets her up on the stand, and her answer to almost every question is, I don't know. At one point she says, I've blocked a lot of that out.
Yep.
And when she is asked, she's almost led like a child through her testimony step by step. And then what happened next? And what happened next? And then did you do this? Did you do this? Because her narrative framework is completely shot, completely destroyed by the trauma that she's gone through. But the moment when the prosecutor says, did you get out of the vehicle and did you see Todd? She almost glazes over like it's regressive hypnosis, and she's back there, back behind the house, looking down at it again. You can tell that what she went through was so traumatizing and that she's reliving it. And what's interesting to me is that this was so long ago. Normally human beings do have coping mechanisms. We have things that help us get over things in time. Sometimes it could take a very long time, but Connie here has never gotten over what she saw that day. And it's important to remember that first responders are people just like Connie, and they see burned people and shot people and hurt people every day. And look at what it does to just one person seeing one thing. So if you ever doubt what first responders go through and what the burden is that they carry with them, I invite you to look at Connie, because she never got over it. Drew.
First responders and medical people, like let's take, for instance, a retired nurse from an ER that, she's done her time and she's retired. She's working off in an office somewhere just to kind of pass the time. But I think that you will find in conversations with people like that, with dispatchers in particular, and with retired ER nurses or retired nurses in general, or firefighters that are retired or that have been on the job for a while, or cops or whatever. It's not necessarily the blood and guts that triggers you. It's the screams, it's the hollers, it's the sheer terror, or it's the realization that a family member is never going to see that person again, or it's the shrieks of pain that people are yelling about. And if she's there to witness it, so she's not only there to witness it, she's the one that called 911. You can very clearly hear Linda in the background screaming and like wailing, to the point where people thought that she was sirens. They thought that she was a fire engine. So obviously she's taking in all of that, and then she's looking down at probably the worst possible thing that your brain can process. It's pretty natural for her to shut that stuff off, I would think. But she, they did walk her through this prosecution. Let's hear what else she has to say.
I don't know which direction, so it would be going down.
And at that time, was the van in the back of the house?
Yeah.
And then,
So pay attention to what John just said, and couple that with what you're seeing on the screen. She's, I don't think, looking at the prosecutor answering the questions. I think she is looking in the inner parts of the DVD player in her brain that is replaying this to be able to recount this. And that's a very dangerous thing when you've dealt with something very traumatic like this.
what did you do then at that point?
I don't really recall.
Did you get out?
I did at some point I did get out, yes.
What did you do when you got out of the van? I'm sorry, out of your vehicle. I misspoke. Please strike that.
When I got out of our truck, I don't know.
Did you call 911?
I did call 911, yeah.
Another truth that I can detect, like if we're doing a truth detection analysis on a person like this, and every single witness I've seen so far is in the speed at which they answer. It's not like, now I do think that people should take a deep breath and answer, because it does show that you've thought out your answer at least, but these people are not hesitating. Therefore, they don't have time to think of the lie on the fly, so to speak. So the speed at which she's answering, she's like, it's at the top of her brain.
Reasonable doubt is going to come down to common sense. And Mike Matheny, Connie Calhoun, their common sense response as others to this incident further show how Linda responded was not the right thing to do. Connie and Mike Matheny arrive on scene. They see the abject horror, the results of what Linda's done, and their first response is call 911. It's obvious, and yet Linda did not do that.
We're about to get to some law enforcement response here in a second and what they saw. Mike Matheny's interview will probably be in another episode that we call the emotional testimony, but just, pay attention to what Connie's saying here, and you'll see some triggers and clues.
You tell them what was going on?
I did.
Were you upset?
Yeah.
Did you, at that point, see Todd?
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And where was Todd?
He was on the ground by the house.
He was on the ground? And you said by the house?
Yeah.
And you saw him once you got out?
Yeah, I was out of the vehicle.
This is also interviews and interrogations, but it intertwines with what we're doing here with courtroom testimony. When somebody is going through a very mentally demanding situation like this, the physiology of your body tells your respirations to increase, your mouth goes dry. She looks like she's getting ready to throw up. And this is a nervous reaction. This is what her body is doing to fight. This is the literal fight, flight, or freeze response that your body, the front part of your brain has to protect you from a new set of trauma. So you're seeing her licking her lips a lot. You notice that her tone dropped. She's speaking a lot softer. And as John pointed out a minute ago brilliantly, she's not making eye contact anymore. She's transported back to that scene. Do you notice anything else, John?
I noticed that everyone in the room is completely captivated by the raw emotion, to the point where even the camera person, who's probably gathering stuff for his portfolio so he could apply to film school, he knows to push in on the camera to capture more fully her entire face as it breaks down, remembering what happened. You could almost see the reflection of the incidents of that horrible day in her eyes, Drew.
And did you get close to Todd?
I did.
Did you see Linda at that time?
I did see Linda.
And what did you see Linda doing?
When we came across Todd.
When you got out of the van, tell me what you saw Linda do.
I don't recall.
Did you see her get out of her van?
I don't recall.
Did you go to the backyard?
I don't recall.
So once you saw Todd, did you stop there?
Yeah, I didn't go any further.
Almost childlike regression there.
Yep, a whole lot of I don't recalls, and I'm finding it genuine that she doesn't recall, because she's probably there's probably hormones or something in her brain that are gushing right now that are preventing her from remembering that.
It's the moment she was fleeing from. I mean, she didn't respond to her subpoena to testify because this is how painful that moment is for her, that she was willing to run afoul of the law and risk contempt of court in order to not cooperate, to avoid this, traumatic moment for her. Drew.
Okay, let's get into some of the law enforcement witnesses. This is a detective, Tom Masiewski, I think is how you say his name.
Good job.
But he's from Van Buren County in Michigan. Retired now.
Did you have an opportunity to view Mr. Todd Stermer while you were on scene?
I did.
And can you describe to the jury then what you viewed and saw?
He was laying on the ground, had several items of clothing placed over him because of the inclement weather at the time. To me, it appeared like he had been burnt. I don't know what his hair looked like before, but it looked like his hair had been mostly burnt. When the medical examiner turned him over onto his side, I could see a large 3 to 4 inch laceration to the back of his skull. His clothing was disheveled. His sweatpants were done around his ankles. He was in stocking feet, just socks on that I saw. Basically, that was it. You could tell his upper chest area had been exposed, but it mostly had been covered up with, from what I later learned, items of clothing that had been placed on him to keep him warm by the Matheny's.
So I just want to point out, this is, let's compare and contrast what Connie Calhoun was going through when she was trying to recount that. Now you've got the grizzled kind of first responder, and, you know, I'm not using the term grizzled in a derogatory way. It's just that he's seen a lot. I've seen a lot. John's seen a lot. And so he's able to recount this story a little bit more callously almost, but it's just another day at the office for him, even though it's not. It's a very significant incident that took place, and it's sitting in his brain somewhere. And generally, as I've said before, once you retire from a profession like this, as I did, you have time to, you would think that you're like, okay, well, I'm insulated from this stuff now. I don't have to deal with it anymore. But unfortunately, this is when it bubbles to the surface. This is when it comes out, because you have time to slow down and think about it. You have time to process it. He's doing a great job at the testimony, because he's able to just, you know, recall these horrific images. But, you know, what first responder probably wouldn't be able to recall something like this right at the top of their brain? John?
This is going to be one of those ones that really stands out. We all have cases like that. Seems like if you're in this profession, you probably have 3-4 a year, depending on how busy you are. But Drew and I both already have cases. I'm sure that we could sit around all night trading stories of the worst things that we'll always remember.
This is Wolf Mueller, the defense attorney. I told you I just like saying his name. I think he's a pretty captivating defense attorney also anyway, but he starts asking questions.
You said there was some fuel smell, a fuel type smell you smelled?
Yes.
And that's after you got there, and you said you came 6 to 8 inches from Todd Stermer?
Yeah, I believe I knelt down there looking at him, the position he was on at that time.
An important point that we brought out in the Hannah Payne case. If you don't know what the Hannah Payne case is, we're getting ready to talk a lot more about that soon enough. But when you're especially a first responder witness, and you're on the stand, the defense attorney is not your enemy. You're there to testify on behalf of the truth, on behalf of the people. So it is in your best interest not to change affect. And don't give the defense attorney the aha moment to the minute you walk out of that courtroom, point to the point to the witness chair and say, you see how contentious that is? You see how that cop operates? What you want to do is just speak the truth. Just tell the truth, and the prosecutor is going to overcome the rest, and the facts are going to tell the story. And you know, there might be some exculpatory or inculpatory statements that you're making towards the defendant, about the defendant.
Yeah.
Let them rest. Let them be where they may.
It's tough because the defense attorney will get you to say things that imply that Linda may not be guilty, when you know in your heart, or you believe, or you know for a fact that she's guilty. And he's sort of giving equal weight or greater weight to what you call the exculpatory things. And you can almost get into a trap, right? This attorney is very smart. He's very clever. Every once in a while, he actually has sort of a little short aside, you know, when he's drawing something for someone on the witness stand and the prosecutor says, well, I can't see it. He goes, well, counsel can move around. You know, he's got a little bit of an attitude. He can hold his own in court. But the best defense attorneys are going to try to provoke you. They're going to try to put you in a position where you think that you can outsmart them or outwit them on the stand. They want their Perry Mason moment, though. They want that moment where they can get you locked into something that they can nail you with or exonerate their client with. One thing that really bothered me about this, everything that he brought up with the gas, I get that the most important thing for the defense was there gasoline on the body of Todd Stermer when the first people to respond to his side, the police officers and neighbors, did they smell gas? the prosecutor had to make the case like, hey, did you smell the house burning? Did you smell the soiled fields? You've got a horse pasture that's right there. Did you smell this? Did you smell that? Did you smell the other thing? People are being overwhelmed in their senses. And so it's like, you may not smell the gas. The problem is if you stop and think about it, it works like this. If you splash gasoline on someone and set it on fire, that gasoline's going to explode and it's going to burn very hot and very fast. And how does gasoline work? We call it gasoline because it emits a vapor that sets on fire. So you get him wet with gasoline and it emits that gas, and that gas catches on fire. If he's already at the point where layers of his skin are gone, where the gasoline was has already been burned away. I've never been in this exact situation, but to me, I wouldn't expect to smell gas on Todd because it had already burned up. I don't think there's residual gas just lying around on his body. And they want to make the case that, you know, and this is the other thing that the defense attorney really bothered me, is that no one smelled it, but there could have been gas there because it was, you know, that there was a motor on the boat at some point. There was chainsaws. There was fuel on Mike Matheny's hoodie. So not only did nobody smell gas, but if there was gas, it was placed there reasonably by someone else.
If there was gas, we have a reason for it.
Right. So having your cake and eating it too, as a juror, I'm just like, well, which is it? Was there definitely no gas, or was there gas and it was Mike Matheny's fault? So that was that. These are just these aggravating moments that when you're on the stand and the prosecutor's trying to have his cake and eat it too, you just want to point out the inherent logical fallacy of that and get him to commit to something. He just wants to rile you up, though, Drew. And you have probably more experience than I do of being under cross-examination scrutiny. And I'm sure you're right that staying calm is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I got a story related to that. I want you to see how the detective reacts to this kind of the Perry Mason moment that you just talked about.
Where did you look? He's close to 6 feet tall. Were you looking at his chest, 6 to 8 inches? Were you looking at his face, check 6 to 8 inches? Where?
Recollection-wise, I would have observed him as close as I could within reasonableness, and along from the head of him to the toe of him, kind of looked him over.
So you would have gotten, he's on the ground, right?
Yes, he is.
You would have gotten on your knees?
Yes, I would have.
And you would have gotten between about 6 to 8 inches from his whole body?
Well, when you put it this close, maybe this would be better.
What would be better, 18 to 24
12
inches?
inches. 12 inches. I mean, I didn't climb on top of him by any means, but I did get close enough where I could smell, for lack of a better term, and not being able to positively identify the fuel. I would call it an accelerant, if you would, or a gassy smell.
You can distinguish gas from anything else?
Again, to sit here and say I could tell gasoline from kerosene or any other kind of fuel, whether it's diesel or not, I would have difficulty in pinpointing beyond saying fuel.
Okay, we'll just call it fuel because I don't want you to speculate and narrow it if you can't, okay?
I cannot, but thank you.
You got there, you're smelling this, and the clothes are still on him, correct?
Yes.
And the clothes are covering his private area and around his groin?
This would have still been in the time that clothing items were being removed from him. From standpoint of when I first made contact to the point of removing clothes, the smell of fuel was there.
Okay.
It's a significant point that he's making about his crotch being covered. He's not doing that just gratuitously. It's because you're going to find out from this witness, Scott Leroy, who's a retired Michigan State Police fire investigator, that the underwear came back from the lab with traces of gasoline in it. So if there was gasoline in the underwear, I think what the defense attorney is trying to make the case of literally is that that was transferred from other clothing that was on him. It wasn't necessarily because he was soaked in it and lit on fire, which we theorize. So, that guy, the defense attorney is like, okay, here's 6 to 8 inches, basically holding his iPad from around 6 to 8 inches from his nose. And the detective rightfully said, look, when you put it like that, no, that's not reasonable. I'll tell you what, don't you think the jury eats that up, John? Don't you think the jury thinks more favorably of the detective saying, I used to think it was 6 to 8 inches, but now when you do it like that, I tend to think it was probably about a foot.
That's what I see as a juror. I see someone who's trying so hard to recollect what happened correctly that we're quibbling over 6 to 12 critical inches. How close do you have to be before you can smell gasoline? That he's trying so hard to correct the record and be absolutely right, that he's very believable.
Scott Leroy is about to testify that his conclusion of arson is which is central to the case, is not just a lucky guess.
My last role was from 2001 to 2020. I was a fire investigator stationed here in Paw Paw.
And 28?
28 is back outside in the front, documenting where the 1 gallon gasoline can is located.
And 29?
Is a close-up of the gasoline can that I eventually collected as evidence.
So all throughout this trial, even the kids testified, yeah, we had gas cans everywhere. We didn't have 1 gallon gas cans. We had 5 gallon gas cans because we fueled farm equipment or lawnmowers or tractors or whatever. There'd be no reason for a 1 gallon gas can.
Neighbors said it was common for everyone to have gas, but yeah, even the sons testified that gasoline was typically kept in the shed under an overhang where the tractor was kept and other equipment was kept. A 1 gallon gas, this is not for any other piece of equipment. This is for if you run out of gas on the side of the road and you need to walk to a gas station. I would almost be curious the provenance of this. I wonder if it was purchased the day of the gasoline, Drew.
And in this specific case, did you recall receiving any laboratory reports related to the items you seized from Mr. Stermer or those you collected at the Sheriff's Department?
I did.
What was that, please?
The lab report, and I'm doing this without looking at the lab report myself. So the gray sweatpants that I collected on the 7th indicated positive for gasoline. The gasoline can that I collected tested positive for gasoline. The items that were packaged in the metal paint cans that came from Autopsy, which included the left and right socks, the underwear, and a shirt, all tested positive for gasoline. Other items that were collected that I packaged myself in the Sheriff's Department evidence lab would have been the clothes from Linda Stermer, a blue blanket, a white blanket, and there may be another item that I packaged. Those items did not show the presence of ignitable liquid.
If Mr. Ernst has already testified here in court about his findings, we would rely upon those exact findings. Is that fair?
Yes.
But you specifically recall the sweatpants, socks, and underwear of Mr. Stermer being positive for gasoline?
And the shirt.
John, I think what I want to do is I want to go through Kate Fox's testimony, and it's relevant and timely because the federal judge took into account that Kate Fox had mental issues, which is one of the reasons that she got that Linda Stermer got a retrial.
And I cannot believe it because she comports herself so well on the stand.
That's what I was going to say. I think that's one of the main reasons why I want to show everybody her testimony here. And she does say some very damning things, which are corroborated by independent people.
Extremely damning.
So I think what we'll do is, John, we'll go through the prosecution witness known as Kate Fox. She was the best friend, BFF of Linda Stermer for a long time. They worked together. They got hired at the company the same day, and everything else. They used to carpool together, so she knows a lot of her secrets. And then we'll probably roll this into a second episode, which would be the third episode, come to think of it, and then maybe a fourth with the emotional testimony, because what I really want you to see is the secret lover's testimony, because I think you're going to love to hate him at the beginning, but you're going to hate to love him at the end of it.
I fell in love.
I don't know if you're going to agree with my assessment, but he certainly was one of the more honest witnesses, and it was definitely something to watch. But
By the way, are we about to see when Kate Fox describes him as the best lover that Linda Stermer had ever had?
we are.
Woo!
I think I edited part of that, the first part of that out of it. Here we go.
Did you guys get close as you were spending time together?
Yes.
And did you talk a lot in the car?
Yes.
Did you talk about Linda's marriage?
Yes.
What did she tell you about her marriage?
She told me that her husband was abusive to her. She was very unhappy in her marriage.
I'm going to let it play, but again,
I thought that was so critical, though, if you go back to the 911 call, because at one point, and when I edited the 911 call, I had a head cold, so my head was a little clogged up, but I thought I heard Connie say, I hope he didn't hurt her again. Meaning
right.
Connie's first impression when she saw that fire at the Stermer residence was that Todd had done something to her, because apparently, and I just thought I heard that, but apparently Linda goes around telling people that Todd hurts her. And Kate here says, no, I never saw a mark on her. Someone else who would have occasion to see a lot of Linda's body would say he never saw marks on her. So Linda went around telling everyone that Todd hurt her physically, and no one backs up that story, Drew.
But let's see if the prosecutor clarifies that any further, John.
Did she say she wanted out of the marriage?
Yes, she said she wanted out of the marriage.
Did you see any evidence of any physical abuse on Ms. Stermer at all?
Not once, not ever.
The speed at which she responded to that was like, look, this is my assessment. This is Drew's assessment of what she's saying. She's saying, I had to drive with this bitch and hear her complain incessantly about being beat up, and she never, ever had a sign of being beat up. She wasn't afraid of this guy. She was out banging other dudes.
Yeah.
And, here she is running her mouth about the guy that ended up dead.
And Kate seems like she's been asked that far too many times, and she's ready to set their record straight for now and for all time. People are asking her, did you ever see a mark on Linda? No, I did not. She's ready to lay that all out, Drew.
Linda
At
has
some
no
point,
reaction to
did
that.
she talk to you about Chris Williams?
She did.
And what did she tell you about Chris Williams?
Chris Williams is the secret lover, so you all know.
They were having a relationship.
So she said that he was the best lover she ever had?
Yes.
Did you know where Mr. Williams lived?
I had occasion to go there with Linda. I never went.
Now, this is why they have people out of the courtroom while others are testifying, right? So that Chris Williams isn't in the back high-fiving somebody, because now it's a matter of law that he's the best lover.
It's on the record.
Inside the house, but I did sit in the car while she went inside after work a few times.
How long were you sitting outside?
Half hour, 45 minutes.
Did she say what she was doing inside?
It seemed implied. I didn't ask.
She could have been playing like Madden.
Drew,
Madden 2016.
Drew, if you and I are carpooling and you go over to a girl's house and make me wait outside for half an hour to 45 minutes, you know what it means? It means you're a bad friend.
And right.
And a bad carpooler.
A horrible car. That's bad carpool etiquette. And please, if I ever say the words like, please don't tell my wife what we did here.
I know, how can you just be like, I'm going to go in here and do some stuff. I'm not going to say what it is. Don't let it get back to Todd or anyone else.
I'm just trying to stay away from my abusive husband.
If you're conducting an illicit affair, try not to include as many people in the actual acts as possible. That's my advice.
And look, hats off to Chris. What's his name? Is this his name?
Chris Williams. Yeah.
Yeah. For being a 45-minute guy. You know what I mean?
Did you call the police?
I did. That was in 2006.
So just a little less than 2 months before the fire, correct? If I told you the fire was
Yes.
January 7th
Yes.
of 2007? And can you tell the jury then why you called the police?
I called the police because she called me hysterical and said that she had a gun and wanted me to give her one good reason not to shoot him.
Not to shoot him?
Not to shoot Todd.
No reaction.
No reaction.
Right? Like, oh shit. This is going to be hard to overcome. As a matter of fact, I think the co-counsel even leans over to her. Like, I think he's checking out the jury's reaction, but
Yeah, it's not good. The thing is that there's so many occasions during this time in which Linda does cry. Linda does look sad. Linda
Yes.
does look charming towards the witnesses on the stand. You'll come to find out more and more reasons why she hates Kate Fox, and probably, I don't know, conspired with her brother to paint her as a unreliable, mentally ill, deranged person. But I just let it play out. I think we're about to hear the part that
maybe not. But we'll cover it in another episode. But we'll finish out her testimony, and then we'll give a preview of what we're going to do next.
And I did my best to calm her down, but at the end of the conversation, I still wasn't comfortable that things had calmed down, and so I called the police.
I think what you're about to hear is what you is exactly what, when people started watching Dateline NBC or 48 Hours on CBS, that they stopped telling other people what their plans would be to eliminate their spouses for this reason and this reason.
I don't know. We had 2020. People learned nothing from that.
That's right. 2020. That was the ABC version.
Had she ever talked about shooting him before that?
She talked about various ways that she had thought about getting rid of him.
What did she say to you?
She talked about shooting him. She talked about running over him with her car.
That seems pretty important.
That one's relevant.
Poisoning him.
Oh.
And she talked about all this with you?
Yes.
And why was she talking about this? I'll rephrase.
Yeah, sustained.
What was the context of that conversation?
Generally, it was when she was talking about how unhappy she was in her marriage.
See how well she does, even when that objection and that rephrase, she's completely on point the entire time. I don't know how Kate Fox was ever painted as an untrustworthy person on the stand.
This is Steve Willison, the insurance attorney. So where we pick up next time is going to be with the insurance attorney from the original fire. He represented the insurance company that was going to pay the claim for the house and probably the life insurance because of Todd's injuries. And you'll hear his rationale. He's an attorney, but he gets to ask questions because he's representing the insurance company. Therefore, it's their interest. It's their money. Like you pay insurance companies all this money. There's no guarantee that you're going to get that money back if something happens, whether it's covered or not. They are going to make you fight to get your coverage back. And there are very specific things outlined in those policies that say, look, if you're the one that caused this, or you did this in the process of a criminal act, we're not going to pay you. The contract is null and void between you and me.
Yeah.
Therefore, the insurance company has kept all of your money that you've paid into, and they're not going to pay you to kill people. So
he's an interesting
yes.
witness. You could tell from the fact that he'd never practiced criminal law when he's on the stand.
Yeah, and I thought he was a very interesting witness because I think approached this in the way that he knew he could elicit criminal information out of her without violating any rules of evidence, or because he has an interest. He is an attorney, but it seems that he's like an interviewer too, because he has to do these under oath investigations to decide what, to give to the insurance company to decide whether they're going to pay the claim or not. So,
and of course, the brothers had a role to play in that. And when Linda told them what to tell this attorney and the insurance company, and it's all very damning. Folks, if you want to be a part of the show, dial 848-COMM-911. That's 848-266-6911. You could leave us an old school voicemail on our non-emergency line. We always appreciate it. Otherwise, you can get in touch with us on social media. Just go to your favorite social media and find us on there and give us a like, follow, subscribe.
If you like what you see, please don't hesitate to hit the like button. YouTube likes it when you like us. And if you disagree with something we say, please make sure you put it in the comments. People didn't hold back last time, and I want to make sure that we get the story right. If you want to check out the video from last week of Sarah Boone's trial, that was another trial that we covered in its entirety. we're bringing we have a whole other separate channel for that. It's called Sarah's Suitcase. If you want to go watch that trial, if you're looking for something to binge, I think it's a fun binge
worthy.
God rest the soul of George Torres, the victim in that. But I think you're right, John. I think that the people probably want to review the video that got us here, and that's right here.
Check out this Linda Stermer video if you haven't done it already. It's great stuff. We'll catch you back here next week. Make sure you check out everything on the Comm Center.